Welcome back to the Authenticity Calling podcast. I am your host, Ralitza and today we have another very special guest. Welcome to the podcast, Kathryn Imabayashi. Is that right? Did I get it right?
That's
Awesome.
perfect. Yeah.
Welcome. It's so amazing to have you here. Can you remind me how we met? Because I've booked about 9 podcasts in the last 24 hours, and my mind is rewiring itself.
Um, it was you posted something that you were opening up spots on your podcast, and I don't often go on that particular group unless I realized I hadn't been a guest for a while, that I've just been doing my own shows.
Mhm.
And when I saw yours, the first thing was authenticity. Like that sparked something. I've just finished, or a book was just launched that was myself and 5 other authors, and the theme of the whole book was authenticity.
Oh,
So I
I
thought, well,
love it.
there must be some reason that this is the one I am seeing. And so I just reached out.
Amazing. I love those synchronicities. That's actually, and I
Mhm.
also really enjoy co-authored books. I don't know if you can see it behind me here on this side. There's Beyond Coincidence. So it's funny, I
Yes.
was in quite a rut about 3 years ago, and I had an appointment setter, and she was reaching out to people to get connections and, and just reach out for me to bring people in. And then somebody who I booked a conversation with was actually a publisher. And she said, when we're sort of on our mission and aligned with our purpose, we start to see synchronicities. I'm like, I know all about that, but I miss it so much. She said,
Yeah.
okay. So I talk about synchronicities in my coaching all the time. And so she said, our next book is all about synchronicities. It's called Beyond Coincidence. And I just couldn't move because I'm like, okay, we're back. We're
Yeah.
back online. We're back aligned. Thank goodness. So I'm so glad. Yes, we're totally tapped in, 100% aligned. Tell me about authenticity and what it is for you, and sort of what did you contribute to the book, or was there a story or more of wisdom?
My part of it, my chapter was basically what I'm doing, I work with parents and educators, and my whole focus is trying to help people understand the inner emotional world of boys and
Mhm.
understand the gifts and challenges that they face in the world today to
Mm,
try and make their experience better, and for parents or educators to just enjoy the beauty of being around little boys, and
mm.
just more understanding, more compassion, more, I don't know. I don't know what the right word is to use.
That's beautiful. As a boy mom, a mom to a son. It really speaks to my heart. And I'm curious, was that from an internal drive because you had or have son, grandkids? What was the stimulus behind sort of supporting boys specifically?
Um, it wasn't intentional. It wasn't something that I always knew, was going to be my path. But when I was lucky enough to have a child, he was born. He was a male, and something happened when he was 3 that opened my eyes to the world that he was going to be growing up into,
Mm,
and had me reevaluating my own feeling about gender. And it just kind
mm,
of sideswiped me. And that was the beginning. And it hasn't stopped yet.
wow. Wow. Are you open to exploring that a little bit? I don't
Oh,
wanna,
sure.
is
Oh,
that
no.
okay? Yeah.
Yes, I've written
I'm
about
so
it.
curious. Sometimes I'm too curious. So I always like to ask permission before I ask questions. But yeah, I'm really curious.
Well, he was about 3, between 3 and 4,
Mhm.
and it was on a Saturday. We were living in Japan. It's a very safe country. My husband was working on a Saturday, and my little guy wanted to go fishing. And so there was not so far away, there was a little creek down a tree-lined path a little bit off the road, but not desolate. And so we went and it was beautiful, just mom and son and a beautiful sunny day. And he had his little plastic fishing rod. We had some Raffi music. It was just a beautiful day. And at that particular time, my career was education. So at that time, it was summer break, and we had just finished. I was teaching the upper elementary level, so grade 5, 5, 6, and so we're down there fishing, and I see something out of the side of my eye coming down the pathway. And what I saw in my mind, I labeled, a gang. There's a gang of boys coming down.
Mhm.
And in a split second, I was filled with total fear.
Mm,
And it was like, how am I going to protect my boy?
mm,
How are we going to keep him safe? And fear, like I was just filled with fear.
mm,
So these young boys come down the path, and there's 5 or 6 of them. And as they got closer, I realized, they're probably 12, 13. Like they're not very old, but like I know that particular summer between the end of elementary, before middle school, many boys have a huge growth spurt. So
mhm,
they're all arms and legs. So they've got these bigger bodies
mhm,
and they still have these little boy hearts.
mm,
So, you know, we had a beautiful time together. They were
mm,
they were lovely young boys, and we spent a few hours together and had a wonderful time. And that could have been it. And I wouldn't have done any of the stuff I've done since. But that night, after my son was in bed, I just started to think, I'm very analytical.
mhm.
I want to make sense of things. I want
Yeah.
to understand things.
Mhm,
And I was trying to think, why did I react that way?
mm,
And, I don't have a history. At that point, I had no history of any kind of violence, any kind of negative, feelings towards, as far as physical
mhm,
safety went.
mhm,
So there was no trauma. There was nothing for me to grab.
mhm,
Why did I react that way without any thought?
mhm,
And I couldn't find the answer, and I was getting very frustrated with it. And I was going to let it go and, kind of sleep on it and come back to it tomorrow.
mhm,
And in that moment, I had an image, and it was, okay, my little boy is 3 or 4 right now. So in 10 years, or 15 years, or 20 years, is another mom, another woman
mm,
going to be filled with total fear
mm,
from my son? And for no other reason than he was born male,
mm,
not because of what he's wearing, not because of what he's doing, just because he's a boy.
mm,
And that thought it broke my heart to
mm,
think that someone would be afraid of my boy. And it was kind of something's wrong with this
mhm.
picture.
Yeah.
And so I want to understand, and then I want to help him understand and make whatever change is possible from one mom.
That's such a beautiful calling. And, we expect to hear these big traumatic stories and how, oh my gosh, like your purpose was activated from some, huge, and for you internally, it sounds like it was. It sounds like that was a massive call to actually question your worldview, I guess. And it's interesting that
Yes.
you haven't had your own experience in this lifetime or hadn't until then. And so I'm curious, have you done any like past life work, or have you done any exploration in like your ancestry potentially? Or I get really curious. I'm also analytical like you. I get really curious. I'm like, that must live somewhere in your body. So yeah, I'm curious about that.
Well, I actually did do so what do you mean by past life?
Yeah, so I
Like
do
just
I
a
do
regression?
time I do timeline therapy. Some people do regression, like in the somatic work that I do as well. Sometimes you go into and you have memories of your younger self, but sometimes memories come up from lives that we actually don't, it wasn't our life necessarily, but it's in our genetic history. And so it's in our body. And so we access it from our unconscious mind or spiritually. And so, yeah, I think there's different avenues in terms of accessing past lives, but any of those have you had, any awareness of?
When I was younger,
Mhm.
I'd only been in Japan for a few years. So I was in my early 30s. And um, I, one thing led to another thing, led to another thing. And eventually I did have a past life regression. And what I wanted to understand was why I was allowing myself to be in a relationship where it didn't make sense. Like I would never let someone, kind of treat me the way I was being treated and keep going back. Like there was nothing in the relationship that made any sense whatsoever. And so I had a past life regression, and um, it was really interesting. And it was the first time for me kind of stepping into that world. And um, it came about that I remembered in another lifetime,
Yeah.
I was a I was a boy. I was the son of a chief in Africa.
Mm.
People are going to hear this and they're going to say, "Oh, she's loony." But
Yeah.
anyway, I,
I
I, I
just
will be
got full body chills.
authentic.
I call them the truth chills. When someone aligns with their soul, it's like that's why I'm closing my eyes because it's so strong. I apologize if it throws you off. Please don't.
No, um, what what the regression showed was I was the son of an African chief. It
Mhm.
was in another time. And I was young and I wasn't yet old enough to hunt, but I wanted to prove myself. And so I went out into the fields to hunt, thinking if I brought back something, I killed something, that my dad, the chief, would recognize me as a young warrior.
Yeah.
And when I was out in the field, I saw something move in the tall grass. And so with my spear, I sent it off and I killed something. Well, it turned out that that something was a little girl, and she was 3, 4 years old, and she was the missionary's daughter, blonde hair, blue eye, sweet. And so that story in itself is horrible, but what was the breakthrough for me was that that little girl was this man that I was having difficulty. So I kept staying in the relationship because I felt so guilty for
Mm,
what I had done in another lifetime, really.
mm,
And I have never felt such freedom after that. It was kind of, that was in another time.
yeah.
I don't have to keep, feeling guilty to this person in this lifetime
Right.
because it has nothing to do with right now. And it was just the most freeing experience I ever had. It was quite exciting.
Wow, that's beautiful. So it's interesting. You said, for people listening will probably think, but honestly, I feel like this is becoming more and more talked about. This type of healing modalities become a lot more mainstream. I think people are
Yeah.
starting to accept and question and wonder, are
Mhm.
my attachments based on past life
Yeah.
experiences, or are they really something that I need to own in this lifetime? So I think it's such a beautiful thing, and thank you for sharing your journey and your past life experience. And that must have been so tough because then I wonder how that affected, the little boy version of you in that lifetime moving forward. And that obviously it stayed with you and your soul's mission to transform
Mhm.
that hurt.
Yeah, I never pursued it any further.
Yeah,
It was kind of, there was a reason for me to do it, and it felt complete
yeah.
when I was finished. Yeah.
Beautiful. That's so beautiful. Something about that little boy is I'm hearing, really the fire under what you've created.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that
Perhaps.
resonates for you, but I think that's why I asked. There was something that wanted to come come to surface
Maybe
about.
I really haven't thought of that, but that, that would make sense too. That would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And thank you for the work that you do. And so if someone, what kind of services do you offer, or if someone was, let's say, a parent like myself to a young boy, I mean, when it comes to conscious parenting, I feel like it's endless what we can learn. I think in terms of educators, I even think in terms of coaches. I just started, I was telling you before we went live, I just got onto this brand, this Korean skincare line. And, a lot of times we're so focused on women all the time. We want to empower women. We want to support women. We want to do skincare routines with women and be in community and tribe with women. But, a lot of men come to me and they say, well, what about the men? Why aren't you creating anything for us? And, I have a very conscious partner, very wise human being, and we have these conversations all the time. And, as a divorced and now single parent, I think a lot about, the way that I have challenged my ex-husband when it comes to um, having access or coming to be able to be with our son. We never got shared custody because of our living arrangements and so on. But I'm able to empathize from a different perspective, and that's one thing about me. I'm really curious. I always like to see the other side. I think when we're going through something and it's challenging, the ego takes over, and we tend to be a little bit more, selfish and kind of
Mhm.
call it selfless. But we're really selfish and trying to make up for our insecurities. And so I just think it's a beautiful way to hold space for. And I think it is a really massive awakening right now that's happening for men and women. But again, I feel like for a long time, women have kind of been naturally drawn to more tribal spaces. We've been naturally drawn as more emotional and communicators. But I think the divine feminine energy is rising on our planet. And I think because we have been fighting so hard to be in these masculine spaces, we've almost shifted. And males have actually elevated more of their feminine energy, more of their intuition, more of their creativity, more of their flow, more of their being okay, being, creative and not hyper planned and micromanaged, and so I'm seeing this really interesting dynamic shifting. And I think it's really important to, and maybe this is a call to action to coaches out there, therapists, counselors, whoever's in this sort of transformational space, this loving space, educators. Oh my goodness, I used to teach as well, grade 7 to 12, and then also medical school and then GED. So basically, I had a whole teaching career in those 6 years, but it's fascinating that, men and women learn differently, and I just don't think we pay enough attention to that. And we don't support little boys to learn the way that they need to learn. So I'm curious with your education background, like what do you think about that?
Um, yeah, I have thought about that a lot. And I've always been drawn to the little boys in the classes that I taught
Mhm.
because I loved their energy and there was a purity.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I don't know where that came from because I come from a heavily populated female family.
Yeah.
One boy, six out of six of us.
Wow.
So I'm not, yeah, so he kind of had to come to our side of things, basically. But once I started to understand some of this, and really it started when I had my own child,
Mhm.
because I had already worked in education for quite a while. I was what they labeled a mature mother when our son was born. So I kind of understood kids and education. And then I became a parent, and then I could understand that piece of the puzzle, which I couldn't have without it. And starting to see the world through his eyes. And then when he started to go to school and recognizing some things that I had done and thought they were great strategies to promote, a fun, exciting classroom. Those were some of the same things that I was seeing were kind of tearing his heart apart.
Mm.
And so anyway, I started getting into learning more, understanding more, and then we left. Well, no, so I tried to share it. I tried to share the information. Um, Sometimes it was just with his teachers,
Mhm.
trying to say, I have an active boy. Here are this is some of the research. This is some of the possibilities to give that extra support. Just, let him run from one classroom to the other end of the building, give an imaginary note to someone, let him come back, let him wear off some of that energy that, he can't sit there as long as the girls. And what I found over time, and eventually I started to put together workshops, and I would share the workshops with teachers' professional development times. And it was interesting to me because I thought other teachers would be just so keen to understand some of these differences and accommodations that could just make it so much easier and more fun and have our little boys thrive. And it was the teachers who were also moms of boys who started to buy in.
Mhm.
And I just didn't get a lot of traction
Yeah.
when I was in the field myself. But
Mhm.
I tried. I did my best and opened some doors and helped some boys as on one-on-one. I could always help, whoever was in my world.
Mhm.
But that's why when I retired, it was like, am I going to take an easy road out?
Mhm.
And it was like, well, that's not me. And it's never been me.
Yeah.
So let's learn what it means to run a business, because that
Oh.
was out of my field completely, and marketing and all this stuff that's just not my world. Education and children, that's my world.
Mhm. And so you were called to create this business now to share this wisdom and knowledge.
I'm guessing that's what it is.
I love it. I love how you're just so curious and you're so open. And so, how old is your boy now?
This summer, actually, he's born on Canada Day, which I think is very interesting. Um, and he turned 32,
Oh,
which I can't believe that,
beautiful.
but 32. Yeah.
Congratulations. That's
Thank you.
beautiful. Yeah, and I sounds like, you were able to really recognize energy moving, right? And I think a lot of times in the Western world, a lot of those boys, these kids would get diagnosed with, for example, ADHD and put on medications and all these different things. And so it's beautiful that you are sharing this wisdom and this knowledge and these different tools for actually supporting young learners and supporting that different perspective. And so if you had a call to action, or if you had one message that you want everyone to take away, what would that be? Maybe it's a curiosity, maybe it's a question.
Probably that the most challenging thing in what I do is trying to get people to have that same moment that I had, in the fishing story,
Mhm.
to recognize that unconsciously we have bias around gender.
Mhm.
And if we don't pull that to the forefront and recognize it, then we perpetuate it.
Mhm.
And so that's where it starts. And so, something as simple as um, there's experiments on, research that you can do online. There's really good information. One of the ones that I often do in workshops that is a real eye opener is I will show a portrait of a toddler, and I will ask 5 questions, and people individually write down their answers. And the portrait is a little toddler dressed in what would be typical, little girl clothes.
Mhm.
And then I will show them and I'll ask them, what do you think is a possible name, a hobby, what the child's character might be. And then I will do the same thing with a second photograph, portrait. And that portrait will be another toddler,
Mhm.
but in typical little boy clothes, and ask the same questions and they write them down. And then when we're finished, I ask them, look at both of your answers, and I will put those two pictures, portraits back on the screen and then say, it's the same child.
Mm.
And look at your answers.
Mm.
Because you get answers like the typical stereotypical, oh, it's a little girl. She's probably going to be an artist, a dancer, a teacher, a nurse. Um, she's probably going to get married and have some kids. She's just sweet. She's going to be all right. And then the little guy the portrait of the little boy that had the baseball hat turned backwards, and he's just your little stereotypical boy. The answers were more like, well, he's going to be a handful, and
Oh,
he's
wow.
probably going to end up being a construction worker or a truck driver, and who knows, he might end up in jail before he's 20. So it was like, so when you write down your answers, even if they're not as drastic, and you see what you have already put on that child
Mm.
before you had anything to you don't know anything about the child.
Mm.
But you're already creating a story in your head based on your biases. And when
Mhm.
that's unconscious, then you perpetuate the same system that we have in society today.
Mm. That is so, thank you for sharing that because, unconsciously, I think a lot of people can really, truly, if you're going to be honest with yourself, if you're listening to this and you're going to be honest with yourself, I think unconsciously we have a lot of those biases, whether it's about the little boy with the backwards hat or whether it's about, the man that you're dating, if you're dating right now, or if it's, your brother or your uncle or, just any man down the street in society, that men are dangerous, that they're not trustworthy, that they don't show up, that they cheat, they lie, they steal, they hurt, there's a lot of unconscious biases, absolutely. And it's interesting because the space that I'm being called into right now, I've had a vision since 2020 and it's starting to kind of come to life now. It's a container that's asking me to create it. It's definitely a co-creative space because there's no way one person could do something so big, but the co-creative space is really asking for all of us to awaken the healer within as humans, as every single human being. And the avenue which it's making me take, and that's why, I used to say, you got to be in medicine to change it. Everyone that knows me, that knows I studied medicine, I graduated, and then I didn't get licensed to practice. And I told this story a few times this week and it keeps coming up, so I'll say it here. But I before I even flew to Aruba, I went to Aruba to study medicine in the Caribbean. Before I went there, I made a Facebook page and it said, in the description, I will not become a pill pushing prescriber. I am more than that. And it was almost like this commitment from my soul to not forget. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
at the time, I knew nothing about meditation and chakras and all these things with the background, the picture. I put this person in lotus position and just, really just this beautiful energy radiating from them. And then I left it. And then I think I left for medical school the next day. So it's funny because
Oh, wow.
coming back, I only found it maybe a year or two ago again. And it was just a beautiful reminder of, and knowing all this work that I've been doing in the coaching space since 2021 and learning about energy and how, the quantum field and just how we are creators truly, and how, in a coaching perspective, when we work with clients, if we don't see them in their wholeness, if we don't see them in their fullest capacity, we should refer them to somebody else. Somebody else should be coaching them because that's really what we're doing. We're holding the energy of their fullest potential. And you shared something about your relationship in the past, so I'll share something about mine that's vulnerable. But my whole life I've kind of been on that path of really falling in love with, and anybody, you can put anybody in front of me and I'll be like, oh my God, they're amazing. I see this like God-given essence in
Mhm.
everyone. And in my relationships, as I know now as a wiser woman, you don't ever fall in love and stay with someone for their potential. you take them as they are, right? And so it was interesting going into the coaching space and now having this awareness. Well, what if we stopped being physicians on the disease model? What if we started practicing wellness and we actually saw our patients as whole and just having a journey to get to that place? And we're facilitating that journey instead of the journey of prescribing medications to maintain a disease by decreasing the symptoms, right? And so it actually kind of goes back full circle to the little boys and the kids and the energy. And it's like, okay, how do we take this system that's moving through this little person and create space for it and encourage, a natural flow in their life so that they don't feel trapped and condemned and like something's wrong with them. And, we have to fix them because we can't put them in these little chairs for hours on end. It's a very similar model. You have something that came through.
Well, no, just you know, when I think of the trajectory of my life and the way that I, raised our son, and everything that has happened shows me that when I can tune into myself, when I can trust and follow, then things will happen as they're supposed to. So, and I keep getting that fact reinforced. So I moved from Canada to Japan, not because that it wasn't on my, it was not a, it wasn't an option. It wasn't one of, I thought someday I'll go to Africa, but Japan was not on my radar at all. And I read a book, and I read a book at the time that I was going through some struggles, and it was not the book, it wasn't the story or anything. It was the feeling I had when I read the book. And the feeling was, you're supposed to go to Japan out of the blue. And I went. And it was just, and so that was one of the times. And there were a few that built up before that. And then a few years later, in another not great time in my world, but in Japan. And someone gave me a book, a self-help book, to help me get through the holidays in a breakup with that person that I said I kept going back and forth to. And anyway, that book was a book about past lives and soulmates and that kind of stuff. And on the back of the book was you could send off for their free newspaper. This is all pre-internet time, a long, long time ago. And so I started getting the newspaper for this author, and he was putting on the following summer. He was in Arizona. He was putting on this, 10-day New Age. I don't know, you call it a retreat, but it was a gathering in Phoenix. And every day there would be between 2 and 3 quite famous authors in a particular area of the New Age spirituality world. And so I decided to go because I was going home for the summer, and I thought, oh, this will be fun. I had no idea that would start a world that I had not known was there. But those two things changed everything in how it's been since. And so, like, my son understands, when I talk about spirituality, when I talk about, past lives, all the things that are connected with there is something greater than we are. But it doesn't mean you sit back and do the Zen thing all the time. There's still a path to, follow your crusade and follow your passion, but it's done with an understanding that you will recognize when you're on the right path, everything falls in place. And
Mhm.
if you keep stumbling and there's obstacles,
Mhm.
something's not right. And you've got
Mhm.
to reevaluate, rethink, and get yourself back on another track and see if that's the right one. I've
Mm.
kind of gone all over the place with that.
I love that. No, I absolutely love it. And I don't know if you follow the Gene Keys at all.
Not a lot. I just kind of, with your podcast, I was looking at some things there.
Okay, okay. So the Gene Keys are fascinating. I went in person to learn more about the Gene Keys last year in the UK, and that was a very like trusting path of you have to be there.
Hmm.
So there's a weekly, it's kind of like a newsletter, and there's a weekly audio that they share. So there's 64 gene keys, and the gene keys are it's an energetic basically um, pattern transformation entity of our own existence, but again, from an energetic form. And they coincide with the 64 potential amino acids based on our DNA. So there's codons and anticodons and then proteins. So those codons code for 64 different amino acids, right? And so what the gene keys does is it's basically an energetic activation and opening of our genes. That's why they're called gene keys. When we move from the shadow into the gift and then into the siddhi. So siddhi is like the essence of that gene key. It's almost like our most spiritual, just our soulful way of showing up. The shadow is basically how we show up tight and in control and in scarcity and sort of that that forceful way of being in life, right? And then the gift is when we can actually accept and see ourselves in our shadow and be able to laugh about it. It's when they're released.
Yeah.
And it kind of transforms into this gift state. And we oscillate, we go back and forth, and we grow in 7-year cycles, and there's all these different, spiritual things. But the gene keys are fascinating because I used to think that, oh, if there's resistance, that just means that I'm meant to go another way. So that's part of it. I think there's a difference between resistance of misalignment and resistance of our growth edge, because those are two things that I think a lot of people confuse. So in my gene keys, I have determination as one of my gifts. And so I know that sometimes when I have this vision or when I have a calling to do something and I'm on that path, that there's going to be challenges. And those challenges happen right before one of my paradigm shifts, one of my up levels. And I think it's because I have this gift of determination where I have to overcome that energy of resistance, and sometimes we talk about imposter syndrome when we have a vision of how we're meant to show up in life kind of in a different way or in a new embodiment or kind of take responsibility for a new identity so that we can share our gifts. And I'm at this cutting edge right now into my shift into a new identity, being more out there, more having the audacity to know that what moves through me is such a gift, and I should be claiming it more powerfully, and I think I know it inside of me, but I don't expose it to everyone. And so it's just this very interesting thing that's happening. And so I was listening to the Gene Keys audio for this week, this morning, and it's all about moving from force and into the gift, into the siddhi. And I haven't finished listening to it, but I just wanted to mention it here in case you
I'm
would
going to look that up.
in
Yeah.
case you'd be interested and curious about it, because it's so powerful how when we move from force into, and I'm
Mhm.
going to tell you what they are right now. So the shadow is, so it's the beauty of the beast is what it's called, and it's gene key 34, and it moves from force into the gift of strength and into the siddhi of majesty. So it has these such beautiful poetic words, and when you listen to Richard Rudd read them out loud, and there's just this shifting that happens in your essence, in your being. And there's the gift of the gene keys. It's all about contemplation. And if you join any, there's a clubhouse for gene keys. They have all these kinds of different events around the world and online. And the way that the community, with some of their principles, are that when someone is sharing, we just hold space for that person to share. and we wait for them to finish, to feel complete, and then the person at the end will say, I feel complete. And then they'll pass it on. And we're not typically supposed to necessarily comment directly, try to fix people or try to, have any kind of influence. It's really just listening and then taking, if anything comes up, taking that and contemplating on our own, like you did with that experience with the boys, right? Because that's where the gift is, rather than sweeping it under the rug, or as you said, oh, I'll just have a glass of wine or scroll on social media or what. We have these patterns and habits of self-medicating so much, unfortunately, that we just shut down our connection with our soul. And so when we can hold space for that, it's just so beautiful. So that's the Gene Keys community. And I'm so drawn to tell you about it. So it makes sense that you were just listening to the podcast before you
Yeah.
came on. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Like, I think it's a fascinating time to be a young person, especially um, because there's more of an awareness. There's more
Mhm.
material that you can tap into to explore. There's just so much more, and it's not that, you know, it's the answers are going to come from the outside. But I think the more that you understand yourself,
Mm,
the better you can tap into your own spiritual access, I guess is what I want to say. So I
mm,
know, like, as an adult, I learned now I could be classified as a highly sensitive person. So
mhm.
it was kind of like, well, that information is, it's, I always knew I was. Like, that's not new.
Yeah.
But the new part of it was understanding I'm not the only one. Like,
Mhm.
there's another 20% of society that are the same kind of similar. And it's like, okay, maybe that wasn't something that was a negative in
Mhm.
my character. Maybe that's going to be one of my superpowers. And then it was
Mhm.
the same thing just a few years ago. I kind of dabbled into a little bit, understanding a little bit more about human design, which was a new
Mhm.
thing. I'd never heard of that before.
Yeah.
And same kind of thing. It was like, oh, I'm in this group of people that there's only 20%. So that's why I always feel like I don't belong, that I'm the
Yeah.
odd duck, that nobody gets me. But there's 20% out there somewhere who relate to my world. So the exciting part is not that there are these new discoveries, in as much as these new discoveries are going to, take us to a whole new level. It's that these new discoveries are going to help us discover ourselves better,
Mhm.
understand that we are good enough, that
Mhm.
we have strengths, we have, gifts, and that part of it, I think, is really, really exciting for
Mhm.
everybody.
Mhm. Absolutely. I love that. I love how you said that because, and it's interesting too. I think what your experience showed to me, and I kind of miss that I didn't grow up this way, was that it was a lot slower paced. You could actually get through a book without your cell phone ringing and this person showing up and that person showing up and having 30 meetings in a day. And, this like very productive space that we're in. You were able to read a book and then see this thing. And then you had to wait for the newsletter to come in the mail. Like there was some
Yeah.
mystery there. There was, that it's so romantic, living a little bit slower and having space for that curiosity and missing that person, or it's just that I think is missing a little bit in our world. But I love what you said about having resources to better get to know ourselves. I think if I hadn't tapped into the Gene Keys, I would definitely have to say, I mean, I knew everything that I read in the Gene Keys, I already know. However, it's almost like it gives me permission to have the audacity to claim some of these callings that like some of these
Yeah.
visions that I've had. That's why it's called authenticity calling too. Because, our journey, our mission, our movement is always calling us in a direction. And we're either going to follow that, Richard Rudd talks about it actually in the transmission from this week. But he says, like Tai Chi, when people learn Tai Chi, they're learning how to trust the movement that's coming through them. It's not like they're actually choosing the movements, right? It's the energy of nature moving through, and you just respond, And so when we're able to be tapped in, and when we're able to, as you say, develop that relationship with ourselves, we are actually a lot less guarded to the pulls. You have to move to Japan tomorrow. I have to go to Aruba to study like the next week. Literally, that's how it happened. When I was in the United States, I got married in the United States, and I did my clinical rotations there. And my husband at the time was studying, and I was a stay-at-home mom. And I remember I had so many visions and downloads about, okay, I have to go back to Aruba and I have to create this movement about youth education and empowerment. And so I started making a website and I started doing all these things. I had no idea when I would be going back, no idea at all. But I started following, those curiosities because I was bored out of my mind and I couldn't believe that I wasn't doing something productive for the first time in my life. Not that raising a child is not productive. Those were just the judgments that I had at the time, instead of slowing down and being grateful for the time that I had. And so, I mean, it was a beautiful thing. It was, and then I saw on Facebook one day, it was a rainy day. I'm someone energetically who needs the sun. And I just saw a post about from Tourism Aruba, and I hadn't seen anything about Aruba for a very long time. And actually, mind you, when I go back to university, my very first poster that I purchased in dorms was a poster of a hammock at the beach, and it said relax. And I'm like, okay, I always knew, right? Subconsciously, we know where we're going to end up. And so, yeah, but that one post, I thought, okay, it's time. I have to go back to Aruba. I have to go and teach, and I have to go implement all these things. And I wrote the dean, and the next week I was in Aruba teaching, like literally just like that. So I feel like a lot, and if anyone's listening and feeling these callings and you're making all these excuses of why not to do it, I mean, we can always come up with so many reasons why not. I think you could have come up with 1,000 reasons why you shouldn't move to Japan. But, I guess it's just, this is a real activation, because I really feel this excitement and this energy kind of lifting off people to stop making excuses, to just do the thing and then just see what happens. Get curious with it, have fun with it, whatever it is, that thing that's calling you. I really feel this really beautiful energy from you, Kathryn, and I'm so grateful that you came to share, and just you were so open to, let's just roll with it and have a conversation. And that's what the Authenticity Calling podcast is really all about, is exploring life together. So I really, really appreciate you sharing.
When you were just talking right now about slowing down and, slowing down, I think one of the biggest, I don't know, contributors to me finding the path that I was, needed to step onto to get things started, was when I left Canada and I, read the book. I did leave within 3 months. I was gone.
Mhm.
And that first year in Japan, it was, I could not have had that experience if I stayed in Canada.
Mm,
And because I'm very reflective, I'm very analytical, everything. I went to a place that I knew nobody,
mm,
not one single person.
okay.
I could not read, I couldn't write, I couldn't understand the language. And so in that year, um, it was like I was in a bubble. Because
Mm,
I wasn't distracted. If I was on the train, I wasn't distracted with other people's voices because
you didn't
I
understand?
couldn't tune in anyway. The visuals didn't impact me because I couldn't read them.
Yeah.
And so that year was a year that I was in my head like a lot. And really, I could not have gotten there if I had stayed where I was. And that year of self-discovery and growth, that was pivotal to changing my world.
Oh, and at that age too, because I feel like there are certain ages that we go through. I mean, I know neurologically there are, but also, there are those transformative moments where we really do need to deepen in ourselves. And I mean, that's the work that I do. One of the first things is slow down, get rid of all the things that are like extra. We have a lot of extras in our life if we really question all of our every single, calendar event, every single contact on our list, every single person we follow on social media, even our plans with our families. Well, I have to go do this thing. And it's like, well, how much do you really want to do that thing? What kind of energy are you going with? You have to go. No one wants you there because you have to go. They want you there because you want to be there. But if you don't want to be there, maybe you should be doing something else with your time, right? And so it frees up people when we say no to the things that really aren't aligned and juicy and exciting and expansive for us. Like we don't have to live with
I
it.
kind of, yeah, I kind of word the same, exact same message you've got, but flip it to the other way that if I can, anything that I have to do, if I look at it and my focus is joy, and
Mm,
it's kind of like, is it bringing me joy?
yeah.
Yes, it is. Keep doing it. If it's not, can you let it go? If you can, let it go. If you can't, then find a way to bring joy in while you're having to do it.
Mm,
And that kind of takes away a lot of that negative, components around
mm,
feeling guilty for not doing something or doing something that you don't really want to do, like just being very intentional about the things that you are doing. And if you have to do them, only do the only do the things that bring you joy. And
I
if you
love
have to do it and it's not bringing you joy, find a way to bring joy into it.
I love that. Oof, that's a mic drop moment. Like, audience, if you're listening right now, whatever you're about to do it with joy.
Mm.
I love that. That's such a beautiful calling because you're right. I think we do make a lot of excuses. Oh, I don't love this. I don't love that. I'm in this space. I'm in that space. But if you can do it anyways and do it with joy, find a way to make it joyful. Oh, you
Yeah.
have to vacuum, turn the music on and dance while you vacuum, right? Like there's so many things that we
Yeah.
can do to cultivate joy. I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Kathryn. That is beautiful.
Mm.
Absolutely beautiful. If you were to leave, I hate to end our time together because I feel like we could talk forever, and we should definitely do another podcast if you feel called.
I'd
But if
love
you
to.
wanted to, yeah, if you wanted to leave our audience with anything at all that's still kind of resonating for you, I think that was a beautiful one, a call to action to bring joy. But if there's anything else, I'd love to hold space for that.
I guess it's just for people to start looking at, and I'm speaking to women. So to start looking at the other half of, the population with a little bit more compassion and curiosity,
Mm,
and let that, you know, we only get better. Like there's this thing, a beautiful thing. Actually, do you have a minute? Can I read you a
of
poem?
course, please. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank
I
you.
have my book, but I don't. Oh, here it is. Because it says everything. Yeah, I
Mm,
love it. It's an anonymous poem, so I can't quote who it's from, but it says, "For every strong woman tired of faking weakness, there is a weak man tired of faking strength.
mm,
For every woman tired of faking foolishness, there is a man tired of having to act as a model of wisdom. For each woman tired of being labeled as an emotional female, there is a man who has been denied the right to cry and be sensitive.
mm,
For every sportswoman whose femininity is questioned, there is a man forced to compete in order to give testimony of his virility. For every woman tired of being considered a sexual object, there is a man concerned about his sexual performance. For every woman who has not had access to a dignified salary, there is a man forced to bear the economic responsibility of another human being. For every woman who ignores the secrets of car mechanics, there is a man who doesn't know how to boil an egg. For every woman that steps towards her freedom, there is the human race is a two-winged bird. One wing is female, the other is male. Until both wings are equally developed, the human race will not be able to fly."
mm. That is so, so beautiful. so funny how we have so many of these judgments out loud about women, but we don't talk as much about the judgments on men and the pressures and, the real
Yeah.
life experiences. Thank you for sharing. That really reminded me of especially the last lines of the Baha'i perspective of life in the
Mhm.
Baha'i faith. It speaks
Yeah.
a lot about the masculine and feminine, men and women, yeah, being two wings of a bird. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was so beautiful. And yeah, I think we'll make a short out of that one and share it everywhere because I think it's a beautiful and important message
Thank you.
for all the little boys out there, all the big boys out there, all the men out there, the grandpas out there, the uncles.
Yeah.
Let's have some more compassion and grace, yeah, with our male counterparts. Thank you, Kathryn. And thank you for digging into your younger self and your past self and yeah, coming into this world so powerfully to share this gift.
Thank you for the opportunity and providing the environment that felt so safe to be able to share.
Hmm, beautiful. Oh, I so look forward to our next call together. And you said, do you have a podcast of your own?
I do. I
Can you
do.
tell us about that?
And I started it about a year and a little bit ago. And this summer, I pivoted a little bit. I had been interviewing parents. It's called Unlocking the Parenting Code, all about boys. And so from this summer, I called season 3. Um, I am only talking to men, fathers, and experts on masculinity and male mental health. And I've had 21 interviews so far in this season.
Wow.
And I'm just, my heart is full. Like it
Mm,
is, that's maybe the missing link to really understanding because we say that men don't talk to us and they're not sensitive and this and that and the other thing. And I think so often they just have not been given a platform because these men, these dads, they are so open and honest about what's going on in their world. And if we don't ask, we don't know.
mhm, mhm,
So yes, that's my
mm.
podcast.
Thank you. That's so beautiful. What is it called so we can find it? I can find it, our listeners can find it.
And it's called Unlocking the Parenting Code, all
Unlock.
about boys.
Amazing. Thank you. And we'll link it too. If you don't mind sending me the link, I'll link it in the show notes so people can find you
For sure.
as well as your website and social media and all the things. As you were sharing, I just noticed that my the line of my drawer actually lines up with the back wall right behind you. And
Oh, yes, it
the
does.
other corner lines up with my picture over there. It's so funny how things just line up in your plant and my plant. It's so funny. But
Well, and your picture is black and red and white, and mine is also black and red and
exactly.
white. Mhm.
I love it.
Meant to be.
It is so meant to be. Kathryn, thank you. Thank you for being such a gift. I would love if you would share any and all insights and everything that you feel called to. I have a group right now. It's actually staring me in the face. It's the Authenticity Calling group on Facebook. It's about P3 alchemy, which is passion, purpose, and potential. It's how we kind of get activated on our authenticity calling journey. But that's a group that I created because, I had created a group for women. It's called the Sexy Successful Sisterhood. And again, all the men were like, well, what about me? And so I created a group for everybody. And that's that one, that authenticity calling. I would love if you felt called to share any wisdom, any calling forward of men who want to be on the podcast or, potential future clients that want to work with you or however you feel called to show up in that space, free workshops, calls to action, whatever you want to share. I would be so honored if you
Well,
would.
thank you.
Yeah, I think
I
that
will.
men will really appreciate it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad that you want to include me in that. So thank you.
Absolutely. It would be an honor to have you there. Thank you. Thank you so, so much for your gifts. Thank you for your love, your light, and yeah, just this beautiful connection. I look forward to so many more.
So do I. Thank you.
All right, Kathryn, take care.
You too. Bye-bye.